Sonny Black walked into his neighborhood bar. He handed the bartender his apartment keys and some cash, then said, "I'm going to a meeting, and I might not be coming back." That meeting was his last. Sonny Black was murdered because he had brought an FBI agent into the Mafia. That agent was Special Agent Joseph Pistone, the man the mob knew as Donnie Brasco. Welcome to Mob Truth. Here in the shadows, every story is written in blood and betrayal. Tonight we uncover the life and downfall of Sonny Black, the man who unknowingly brought an FBI agent inside the Mafia. That agent was Joseph Pistone, better known as Donnie Brasco. If you're new here, subscribe and join the family. Every new soldier makes his crew stronger. Welcome to Mob Truth. In the Mafia, loyalty was measured not by words, but by the embrace of a brother. A hug on the street wasn't just affection, it was a contract. Men in long coats and fedora hats greeted one another as if bound by blood, though many of them knew that betrayal was always a heartbeat away. For Donnie Brasco, these moments were tests. Every handshake, every hug, every whispered promise dragged him deeper into the life and closer to being discovered. To pass these tests, he had to move like a wise guy, talk like a wise guy, and live like a wise guy, until he was one of them. Behind closed doors and in narrow alleys, business was decided. Two men leaning close, their words drowned by the rain and the hiss of steam pipes. This was the Mafia's boardroom. No ledgers, no paperwork, only whispered deals sealed with trust and fear. It was here Donnie Brasco learned the art of blending in, how to nod at the right time, how to never ask too much, how to look like you belong without ever stepping out of line. One mistake, one slip of the tongue, and his story as a jewel thief could unravel. The longer he stayed, the harder it became to remember where Pistone ended, and Brasco began. The streets of New York were lined with temptations. Neon lights, shop fronts full of gold and diamonds. For the mob, jewelry wasn't just about luxury, it was currency. Precious stones moved through the underworld like cash, easy to hide, easy to sell, impossible to trace. Donnie Brasco's cover story as a jewel thief made these storefronts his camouflage. He could point at a necklace and talk about its cut, explain how to move it through the black market, even how to swap a diamond for glass without a jeweler noticing. To the wise guys, this wasn't talk. It was proof. Proof that Donnie belonged in their world. Every sidewalk conversation outside these shops was another brick in the wall that protected his secret. Inside the jewelry shops, the stakes were even higher. Surrounded by glittering stones and polished silver, Donnie Brasco became the expert he claimed to be. Wise guys leaned close, asking questions designed to trap him. What's this stone worth? Where could it be moved? Who would buy it on the street? Every answer mattered. A hesitation, a wrong word, could cost him his life. But Donnie never slipped. Years of FBI preparation paid off. He spoke like a thief, like a man who lived off the sparkle of stolen goods. In those moments, standing behind glass cases of wealth, the mobsters didn't see Joseph Pistone, the agent. They saw Donnie Brasco, one of their own. Nights in the bars were where bonds were forged. The table wasn't just about cards or whiskey, it was about trust. Men sat shoulder to shoulder, voices low, eyes sharp. Every deal of the deck, every pour of liquor, was a ritual of belonging. Donnie Brasco sat among them, holding his cards like he'd been doing it all his life. He laughed at their jokes, cursed when the chips fell the wrong way, and listened carefully to every word the wise guys let slip. Around this table, fortunes shifted, grudges were born, and alliances were sealed with nothing more than a nod. For the mob, these smoky rooms were the heart of the family, and for Donnie, they were a trap he had to walk into night after night, knowing that one mistake, one slip of the tongue, one story that didn't add up, could end with a bullet in the back of his head. But the more hands he played, the deeper he went. To the mobsters, Donnie wasn't an outsider anymore. He was a man who showed up, paid his dues, and lived by the code of the street. Each drink, each card game, each joke shared in the haze of smoke pulled him further into their world and further away from his own. But trust didn't come easy. One night in a smoky back room, Brasco sat across from Jilly, Frankie, and a stone-faced soldier named Patsy. The air went dead quiet when Patsy reached under his coat, pulled out a revolver, and set it hard on the table. He leaned forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Unless you can convince me you're real jewel thieves, the only way you're leaving here is rolled up in that rug." They started grilling Donnie on everything: where he came from, who he ran with, how he made his money. Every detail was a test, every question a trigger waiting to be pulled. One wrong answer, and it was over. But Pistone held his nerve. He spun stories with the kind of grit and detail only a man from the street could carry. He named places, dropped names, and kept his cool while the barrel of Patsy's gun seemed to grow heavier with every second. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Patsy leaned back, gave a slight nod, and called the halt to the meeting. Donnie Brasco had passed the test, but it was a reminder that in this world, trust was earned at gunpoint. Hijacking trucks was one of the oldest rackets in the mob playbook. Every day, convoys of freight left the docks and warehouses of New Jersey, loaded with cigarettes, liquor, televisions, clothing, anything that could turn a profit. To most people, they were just delivery trucks. But to the Mafia, they were rolling banks, ripe for the taking. Crews would pull up in the dead of night or early morning, box a truck in, and shove a gun in the driver's face. No arguments, no heroics. Most drivers knew the score. You hand over the keys, you keep your life. Within minutes, the truck was gone, unloaded into mob-controlled warehouses, and the goods redistributed through a shadow market that stretched across New York. Department stores, street vendors, even legitimate businesses. They all ended up selling mob merchandise. This wasn't petty theft. This was an industry. It created jobs for the crews, gave soldiers quick cash, and gave the bosses leverage. And the thing about hijacking was, it fed directly into the other rackets. The stolen cigarettes were sold in clubs where gambling ran all night. The stolen booze poured into bars the mob controlled. Everything was connected, every dollar recycled back into the organization. And that's where gambling came in. Hijacking might pay the bills, but gambling paid for the mansions, the Cadillacs, the envelopes stuffed with cash that traveled up the chain. It was gambling that kept soldiers loyal and bosses rich. From corner bookies taking small-time bets on horse races to high-stakes poker games where thousands changed hands in a single night, the mob controlled it all. The system was simple. Nothing happened without a tax. Every bookmaker, every casino operator, every card room, they all paid tribute. If you didn't, your doors didn't stay open long. The mob didn't need contracts or lawyers. A bat in the dark, a fire through your front window, or a visit from two men in leather jackets. That was the only reminder anyone ever needed. And presiding over much of this empire, especially in Las Vegas and Havana, was Santo Traficante Jr. His name carried weight from Florida to Cuba to Nevada. Traficante wasn't just another boss. He was a bridge between American mobsters and the glittering casinos of Havana and the neon strip of Vegas. If you wanted to deal cards under those lights, you went through him. His blessing meant protection, profits, and prestige. His refusal meant ruin. For undercover agent Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco, this was the world he was sinking into. He wasn't just shaking hands with jewel thieves or hustlers anymore. He was wading deeper into a structure built on hijacked trucks and crooked dice. A system policed not by the law, but by men like Traficante, who knew that true power came not from pulling a trigger, but from controlling the games everyone else was forced to play. For Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco, survival depended on more than blending in. It depended on being trusted. And in the Mafia, trust wasn't given. It was earned, piece by piece, night after night, through loyalty, silence, and nerve. Sonny Black Napolitano was no fool. He wasn't the kind of man you could charm with a smile or a clever story. He had seen too many punks come and go, too many men claiming to be earners who ended up being liabilities. But something about Donnie, it was different. Donnie didn't ask questions. He didn't push too hard. He showed up, paid his way, and kept his mouth shut when the room demanded silence. That earned him space at the table. At first, it was small gestures. A ride here, a drink there. Sonny would test him, give him little jobs, run small errands, and wait to see if Donnie complained. He never did. Then came the bigger jobs, collections, moving merchandise, helping out on hijackings. Every time Donnie was steady, no panic, no hesitation, and slowly Sonny's guard began to drop. The two men started spending more time together, not just in bars and clubs, but in quiet conversations that outsiders never got close enough to hear. Sonny would let Donnie into his inner circle, introduce him to men who had real weight, men who didn't meet with just anyone. That was no small thing, because an introduction was a form of sponsorship, and in the mob, your sponsor was your lifeline. But it wasn't just business. There was respect. Sonny saw in Donnie the kind of discipline he admired, a man who didn't flinch under pressure, who knew when to speak and when to stay silent. More importantly, Sonny saw loyalty, or what he believed was loyalty. In a world where betrayal meant death, Donnie seemed like the kind of guy you could count on. What Sonny couldn't know, what none of them could know, was that every handshake, every quiet nod, every night sitting shoulder to shoulder in smoky bars was being watched, studied, and recorded. Donnie Brasco wasn't just building a friendship, he was building a case. And the deeper the trust grew, the more dangerous it became. Because the closer Sonny brought Donnie to the heart of the Bonanno family, the more certain it was that when the truth finally came out, Sonny himself would be the one to pay the ultimate price. While Donnie Brasco was earning the trust of Sonny Black and the Bonanno crew, another story was unfolding miles away. Inside FBI safe houses, reel-to-reel tapes spun endlessly. Hours of Brasco's conversations, every coded word, every laugh over a drink, every whispered detail. Agents huddled around the recordings, dissecting the language of the mob, learning its rhythms and secrets. Supervisors at FBI headquarters, under the watch of men like Assistant Director Neil Gallagher, knew they had stumbled onto something historic. This wasn't just another case. It was the deepest penetration of the Mafia in U.S. history. But with that success came danger. Every day Pistone stayed undercover, the risk multiplied. Sonny Black was grooming Brasco for bigger moves, and the Bureau watched, torn between two realities. On one side, priceless intelligence that could dismantle the Bonanno family from the inside. On the other, the very real possibility that their agent could end up in a basement, never to return. Meetings grew heated. Some wanted Brasco pulled out, fearing that the mob's suspicion was closing in. Others argued the operation had to go further, to let Pistone reach the inner sanctum, to expose the very hierarchy of the Mafia itself. The decision was made. Donnie Brasco would stay in play. He had become too valuable, too trusted by Sonny Black. And so, with the FBI listening through the walls, the stage was set for one of the boldest chapters in mob history. A chapter that would soon bring Brasco aboard a boat, under the watchful eyes of men who had already killed for less. Tony Mira had been away, locked up, a name whispered but half forgotten on the streets. When the news broke that he was out, the underworld shifted. Mira wasn't just another wise guy. He was a soldier of the Bonanno family, and he had a reputation for being ruthless, unpredictable, and mean to the bone. Now, fresh from prison, he was looking to reclaim what he thought was his: the streets, the rackets, and the money flowing through Donnie Brasco. From the moment he stepped back, Mira's eyes were on Donnie. He saw a guy who had risen fast, who was making envelopes, earning respect, and sitting close to Sonny Black. And Mira didn't like it. In his mind, Donnie was a kid who had been under his wing once. And if Donnie was earning, then Mira had a right to taste it. But when Mira demanded a piece, Sonny Black shut him down. Sonny wasn't going to hand over one of his most loyal earners to a guy who had been out of the picture for years. That decision cut deep. For Mira, it wasn't just about money. It was about pride. To be denied meant humiliation, and humiliation in the mob was blood in the water. So Mira began whispering in corners, planting seeds of doubt. He spread the story that Donnie Brasco wasn't what he seemed, that he was keeping money off the books, skimming from the commission, breaking the sacred rules. In smoky back rooms, with coffee cups and ashtrays piled high, Mira leaned in, painting Donnie as a thief in the family. The whispers grew into talk, and talk grew into suspicion. Soon enough, a sit-down was called. The tension in that room was heavy. The bosses and captains wanted answers. Was Donnie Brasco clean? Was he loyal? Or was he playing his own game? Every question was a test, every glance a blade. Donnie sat calm, answering with precision, backing every move with Sonny Black's word. And in the mob, your sponsor's word was life or death. When the smoke cleared, it wasn't Donnie who looked weak. It was Mira. His accusations hadn't stuck. His play for power had backfired. But Tony Mira wasn't a man who let things go. His temper boiled over, and soon the streets saw it. Outside Club Venetia, under the neon lights, Mira confronted Sonny Black face to face. Voices rose, hands pointed, the argument echoing off brick walls. For a moment, it looked like it would turn bloody right there. But Sonny stood firm, cutting Mira down with words sharper than knives. Donnie stays with me. End of story. And that was it. In that moment, lines were drawn. Mira had made an enemy of Sonny Black. And in the mob, that was a death sentence waiting to be signed. Donnie, for his part, had never been closer to the fire. The more Mira pushed, the deeper Sonny pulled Donnie in. Against all odds, an undercover agent had survived the storm of accusations. And instead of being cast out, he walked away more trusted than ever. But that trust came at a price. Mira wasn't finished, and the bosses weren't blind. The streets buzzed with rumors, and the commission itself wanted clarity. Donnie Brasco's world was tightening, the danger closing in, and all of it was leading to one of the most dangerous chapters yet: the boat. When Donnie first brought the Banana crew out on that sleek white boat, it was all about appearances. Out on the water, fishing poles in hand, the mobsters felt like kings. Sonny Black laughed, Frankie cracked jokes, and for a while Donnie looked like he had just raised his stock in the family. A man who could deliver comfort, privacy, and a taste of the high life. But weeks later, the headlines changed everything. A newspaper hit the stands with that same vessel splashed across the page. The FBI had used it during a raid, exposing politicians, wire rooms, and corruption that had nothing to do with the mob. That morning, Lefty Ruggiero slapped the paper down, pointing straight at the photograph. His voice was sharp, suspicious. "Donnie, this is the same goddamn boat we were fishing on." "You kidding me? How the hell we end up riding on an FBI vessel?" The room went quiet. Donnie kept his face steady, his story rehearsed. He explained it was just a rental, that he had no idea who really owned it, and that the feds weren't after them. They were after crooked politicians. But Lefty wasn't finished. He leaned in, cigarette burning low, eyes locked on Donnie. "You better tell me the truth, kid. If we were sitting on a federal boat, we're all in the ground. You understand?" Donnie didn't blink. He swore it was a coincidence, swore he was clean. And in the end, Lefty exhaled, shook his head, and waved it off. "All right, maybe you're right. They weren't chasing us anyway," but deep down, suspicion lingered. In the world Donnie walked, one headline could erase years of trust, and one wrong answer could have sealed his fate. The Carmine Galante. Hit the summer air in Brooklyn was thick with tension. Carmine Galante, the cigar-smoking boss who had carved out a reign of terror, sat down to lunch at his favorite Italian restaurant. It was supposed to be just another meal of pasta and wine, but in the Mafia, peace was an illusion. Without warning, 3 masked gunmen stormed the patio, their shotguns raised. They weren't outsiders. They were men sent by his own organization. Galante's bodyguards froze, and in seconds the air was filled with thunder. Plates shattered, tables flipped, and Galante's empire ended right there, in broad daylight. The message was clear. No one was untouchable, not even a boss. And for the men like Donnie Brasco, watching from the shadows, it was a chilling reminder of the brutal fate that awaited anyone who misstepped in this world. In the aftermath of Carmine Galante's assassination, the Bonanno family tried to steady itself. Violence and betrayal had become part of daily life, but through it all, Donnie Brasco's bond with Sonny Black, Napolitano, only deepened. Sonny had watched Donnie for years, through card games, hijackings, and sit-downs. He had tested his loyalty, seen him keep his mouth shut, and trusted him with jobs that could have gotten them both killed. Now Sonny made a proposal that carried a weight heavier than gold. Donnie, you've earned your bones. It's time you move up. You've got what it takes to be more than a soldier. I want you as a senior man in this family. It was an honor almost no outsider could dream of. Donnie Brasco, an FBI agent, was on the verge of crossing a line that no lawman had ever reached. But back at headquarters, the Bureau saw the storm building. Galante's murder was just the beginning. Power struggles were erupting, bodies were piling up, and anyone close to Sonny Black was now in the crosshairs. The FBI made their call. Despite Donnie's protests, despite his insistence that he could carry the operation even further, the Bureau shut it down. For years, Joe Pistone had lived as Donnie Brasco, and now, just as he stood at the doorway to the Mafia's inner circle, the mission was over. The decision saved his life, but it also sealed the fate of those who had trusted him most. In that dim basement, Sonny Black shouted his warning, "If Donnie's a rat, I'll be the one who pays for it." Those words sealed his fate. He vouched for Donnie Brasco with his life, never knowing the truth, that Donnie was FBI agent Joseph Pistone all along. But the operation couldn't go on. Orders came down from Washington. It was too dangerous. The FBI pulled Pistone out before the mob could close in, and the fallout shook the underworld. In 1985, Joseph Pistone testified in the historic Pizza Connection trial, the longest in American history. His undercover work exposed the Sicilian pipeline flooding America with heroin and brought dozens of mobsters to justice. The Mafia had been infiltrated from the inside. What started as trust between wise guys ended as one of the deadliest blows the mob had ever faced. Soldiers, if you made it this far into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber becomes part of the Mob Truth family. Welcome, new soldiers, to the ranks. Stay tuned, because more stories from the underworld are on the way.